There hasn't been a lot of good days as a Wisconsin Badger football fan lately, but yesterday was one of them. The 2025 class is in. Justin and I are here to talk about it.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together for a midweek special episode to talk about the 2025 signing day. We have inked our 24 recruits, and we're going to get into all that. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, so you know when we make new content. First and foremost, this is a live show. It is live during the Packers game. Sorry about that. I'm getting lit up in the Discord because, during the Packers game, but have it on your other screen. It's all good. If you're listening to this later, podcast, however you take in the content, thank you so much for helping grow the show. Justin, it's been a pretty lousy few weeks for the football program. You and I have certainly talked about on this show, on Locked On Badgers, everywhere. We talk to each other. It's bad. Yesterday was a good day. The 2025 class is in. We're going to get into each position. We're going to tell you who's in the class. We're going to grade each position. Then we're going to get into some superlatives and answer the question about who our biggest star is going to be. Justin, let's just start here. Big picture thoughts on the class and kind of how it fits into what right now is a bit of a struggling football program.
Well, it's an exceptional class. I thought last year's was great. I thought this year's stacked. Due to a couple of late additions, I actually feel like it's a comparable class to last year's class now. This is exactly what you need to do. You need to stack talent, and it can't just be recruiting rankings. The guys have to be athletes, and they have to have some potential to them. What I've seen in both of these classes are athletically, these are a step up from what we've seen in the past at Wisconsin. They're going to need time to marinate and, kind of reach their ability level, but there's more athleticism in these couple of classes than we've ever had in back-to-back classes.
And that's the thing you have to do. And I know it's hard right now to look to the future because of everything we just saw in the field, losing the axe and everything. And then, basically our entire secondary entry in the transfer portal. But this is how you got to build the program. Whoever you talk to, whatever you think about college football and the new rules and NIL and everything, you got to build through high school recruiting. And that's just how it happens. And yes, some of these guys are going to enter the transfer portal. Yep. We're going to lose some. We're going to
bust.
But hopefully we've got a couple in here, and we think we do, that are really going to develop into great players. And I think, Justin, your point about stacking classes is so important. For so long, we haven't really been doing that. And now we're truly stacking back-to-back classes where you can see the future. If you believe in what this program and what this recruiting coaching staff is doing, I think we all agree with what they're doing and believe in what they're doing on the recruiting trail. So let's just hope that translates to the field. But nonetheless, no more negative talk. We got a good class we want to get into today. So we'll start with positions. Justin, let's start right at the top. Quarterback, certainly one of the most important positions, the most important position in the game. Carter Smith, 4-star, 6'2", 185 out of Fort Myers, Florida. And, of course, Landyn Locke, brother of Brayden Locke, 3-star out of Rockwell, Texas. I mean, first of all, what's your grade on this class, and how excited are you about the fact that we've got Carter Smith?
It can't be anything but an A. When you look at it historically based off of what Wisconsin gets at the quarterback position, Carter Smith is the second highest rated recruit they've ever gotten at the quarterback position. It's as simple as that he's an A. Landyn Locke's a nice flyer. I don't know how he's going to necessarily fit what they end up doing for an offense going forward, because I do think they want to get more athletic at quarterback, but he gives you a body to develop, and maybe some things come together where he becomes a really quality passer, and you find some things you can do with him that maybe you can't do with a guy like Carter Smith. Smith to me is the star of this class on the offensive side. Guy can really run, has more than enough arm, athletic, is tough as nails. And that to me is one of the things. We're looking for people who can lead on this team. He absolutely is exactly what you're looking for from a mindset and determination type at that position. You want a guy who's not afraid to go out there and get in the face of an offensive lineman. This is the type of dude that you want out there for that. He's a bulldog, and that's exactly what I want at the quarterback position. I want him to be the guy that the linemen go, man, he's tough. And that's what I see when I watch him on film.
When I watched Carter's film, the first thing I said was he's a football player. You said it right. He is just a football player, man. And that's exactly what we need.
He's,
I mean,
like
he's out there
on
lead blocking. Yeah. I mean, the dude is an athlete. He's tough, but he's a mobile quarterback with a big arm. That's two like big bright lights that I like. I mean, you got to have some mobility. I'm sorry, in today's football, that's just part of it. And he has it. We saw what happened with the team that didn't have mobility last year in Brayden Locke. So hopefully Carter Smith can be that guy. When I grade positions, I'm thinking about a couple things. Obviously, the top end of it, right? The ceiling, Carter Smith, but also the number of people. You've got to have people in the class, which is we'll get to another position. We have only one, and that's a point of contention. But yeah, this is an A for me as well. Carter Smith certainly looks like the future. You've got two guys on the roster after he arrives in Mabry and Carter. Both guys that I think absolutely have the ability to be a good, great starting quarterback in this league. I don't know if Mabry is going to be the guy. It's upsetting, obviously, kind of what's happened. We didn't get to see him play at the end of last year, but I think ultimately that it's good for the class and good for everything that we've got both of these guys in there. All right, Justin.
I want to say one more thing regarding this.
Offensive line. Good.
There are people that are worried about his delivery, and I'm just not. Like, I know it's more of a baseball delivery that he has, but there's not an issue with him. I don't think it's super long delivery. I just think it's unorthodox because it's more of a baseball player throwing motion. But if he's got accuracy and he gets the ball out quick, I don't care. Like, the last thing I want to see them is mess around with his throwing motion and screw up his accuracy. So if he's able to get the ball where it needs to be, I don't care. And he gets rid of the football very quickly. And I think the fact that he is more of a baseball player with it helps him with some of the off-platform throws. Because baseball, anyone who's played baseball consistently for years, one thing that you do is you're consistently finding various ways to throw and get rid of the ball quickly. And it's not over the top. You're not normally prepping and throwing and loading up the way you want to. You're trying to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible because you just don't have the time. And that's one of the things with his throwing motion that I look at, and I'm like, it's delivery meant to get rid of the ball quickly.
And you know what? People are going to do it differently. I mean, there's a lot of people in the league that do it differently. And I think, let's just let him be him. And I think that's important. And
Phil Rivers was a shot putter for however long. And he's one of the most accomplished statistical quarterbacks in NFL history.
Yeah. Yeah. He played on my team for a year too. It was crazy. But it is what it is.
Played as a aggressive.
Yes. He tried. He actually played okay. But anyway, we digress. The best part about this entire class, in my opinion, is the trenches. We're going to start on the offensive side just because I'm going to just start here and just say, this is Wisconsin football. And I don't care what offensive system you want to run. You want to run the air raid, you want to run the power spread, whatever you're going to do, we need an offensive line that is Wisconsin worthy. And that means the ability to run the ball, the ability to protect the passer, the ability to control the line of scrimmage. And we had that for years, which is why, as I've said many times, we are a high floor team. We were a high floor team. If we want to get back to that, we need to build from the inside out. Any team that I'm a fan of, I love when we build from the inside out. I think that's how you have to do it in football. And I don't think there's any other way to do it. So this offensive line class compared to last offensive line class, coupled with that, just shows me, Justin, that we are doing that we are going to build from the inside out, that, God damn it, we are going to have a good offensive line. And that is super important to me. And it's super important to success of this program. And you want to beat up on bad teams in the Big Ten. You want to compete with good teams in the Big Ten. You have to build from the inside out. This is an A for me. Hardy Watts, Nolan Davenport, Logan Powell. Okay, so let me go through this. Hardy Watts, 4-star out of Brookline, Massachusetts, 266, 290. Logan Powell, 4-star, 6'4", 280 out of Phoenix. Michael Roeske, 3-star, 6'7", 290 out of Watoma. Was it Watoma? I don't know if I wrote that right. Cam Clark, 3-star, 6'7", 275 out of Dexter, Michigan. And Nolan Davenport, 3-star, 6'6", 260 tackle out of Massillon, Ohio. Where are you at on this?
Yeah, there's two ways to look at it. You can compare it against last year's class, and I would give this group probably a B in comparison to last year's class. it's an A in terms of an actual offensive line class.
That's fair way to look at it.
I love the athletes that are in this class. I think last year's ceiling was a little bit higher with some of the guys. Like I look at last year's class and there's guys I'm like, these are top end of the draft type athletes.
Yeah.
In Mandel and Haywood. And I'm like, but I look at this class and there's guys loaded with potential. Like I wouldn't be shocked if every guy in this class they all have pro ceilings if they can put it together. Watts is a guy who's really polished. I was actually talking with Ryan about him a little bit, going back and forth about the him or Mandel. And I'm like, Mandel's athletically a little bit more like a more fluid athlete, and Watts is more polished.
Yep.
I'm like, so that it's choose what you're looking for. But this group, to me, is exactly what you need in terms of depth, because you're not getting inferior players to what last year was. Like these are all guys that have really high ceilings still, that you look at it and you're like, well, if one of those guys just isn't what you thought he was, these guys are coming in at basically the same pedigree. And it's like, you're not taking a step back. You're not downgrading. Really, the only difference is experience level.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this, just for fun. Let's think about what this offensive line could look like in, let's say, 3 years, right? But between last class and this class, how do you see the starting five offensive linemen laying out in our system in, let's say, 2 years when all these guys are in the fold? What do you think that could look up like a pretty special line?
Yeah, I guess I would say probably it's going to be Haywood at left tackle.
Yep.
I will say, I don't know where they'll put him. I'm going to say Mandel at left guard. I don't know if that's there. He'd be there or right guard, but I would say that. I'd say Corey at center. I would say Watts at right guard. I would say, right tackle. Oh, it's tough because both I really like Davenport and Powell. I'm going to say Davenport right now.
Yeah, I would say Davenport as well. I mean, he's what a frame.
But it's like either one of them.
Yeah.
But what you're going to have is you could basically do hockey lines with these two lines from a talent level and just say we're swapping one group out for the next.
Yeah, and think about that when you're pushing into the late fourth quarter, you're trying to run out the clock, you're trying to just impose your will on the other team. All of a sudden, you've got literally lines, right? You got two lines that you're very, really comfortable doing that. I love it. I think that's fantastic.
And a coach that you really trust to develop them and blaze it.
For sure, man. The one thing I can point to on this team that I'm so happy about is the offensive line. That I feel like that's really where, and again, like I said, you have a hard time looking at a team that has this kind of talent in the line at a school that develops them well, and then that floor it has to raise. That will automatically raise a floor when you do that.
So it's funny too, because a lot of people, despite the type of season we had, I know there's people that don't agree, but the offensive line actually was not bad this year. Like they were not responsible for us not being good. In fact, from a pass blocking standpoint, they're one of the better units in the Big Ten. So, I mean, you can be unhappy with the offense as a whole, but the offensive line really wasn't terrible.
I mean,
that's why I'm saying from a Blazek standpoint, I trust.
If you put a better quarterback behind that offensive line this year, everything looks better. Obviously, the passing game looks better. Sure. The running game looks better too because you've got more threats. So, yeah, the offensive line was fine, and it's only going to get better. Mike H, Rajeev and Justin, my buddies, caught live show finally. Pretty solid class. Let's hope we can keep them. Crossing fingers. Yeah, Mike, thanks for joining us. All right, one-person class, wide receiver. Fantastic talent, though. Eugene Hilton, 4-star, 6'2", 195 out of Zionsville, Indiana, near my hometown. Eugene Hilton's a one-man class, Justin. That's a problem. It's a one-man thing. Obviously, one of the guys that we'll talk about in our superlative later. We lost a couple options that we had. He's a great talent. I mean, he's a guy that I think has game-breaking type ability, really, really good route runner. When the ball's in the air, he makes good adjustments. I think he's a fantastic receiver. Clearly, the pedigree is there. His dad is T.Y. Hilton, of course. But when you have one guy, I'm sorry, but this is like a C- for me. No, not because of the top end of it, because the depth. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I think I gave it a B- for that reason. Just because I like Hilton, but you needed more bodies. You absolutely had to get more in this class. Even on the outside, like I know we had Cam Miller, but he's not really a guy that I'm looking for on the on the outside to play up, and that's really where I think the team's going to start thinning out soon. We didn't need to keep stacking 10 different, slot receivers. You can only use one guy at a time. It just doesn't make sense. It would have made more sense that instead of Cam Miller, they went with somebody with some more versatility that could have played both. And that kind of bugs me that we're not really targeting that. I think Hilton's a guy who's capable of actually pushing as a freshman. I think he's that polished that he's a guy that if he can get the playbook down, he's capable of getting some reps out there. And we'll see what type of depth there is. He's going to get opportunity, I think. I think some of the guys in the receiver room are probably not being given the credit they deserve. I actually thought that Williams was better this year. I think we'd still like him to see another step from him, but I don't think that he was a terrible player this season. I think he was average. But he's not hurting you. But Hilton can give you some potential upside there that we have not seen.
Yeah, look, I mean, Hilton is, as you know, we talked about it a lot in the summer. He's one of my favorite guys in this class. I absolutely love him. I think was not really a fan of Cam Miller. You know that. I just didn't really see it. But Eugene Hilton is the guy that I
growth senior year.
Yeah, and which we said, I was like, well, he better put something way better on film, and he didn't, and I'm fine with him not being a part of the class. But yeah, so really, really like Hilton. So my grade being a C- doesn't sound good, but it's just a sheer numbers thing for sure.
They need more bodies in that class.
100%. And
especially in a receiver room that, while I don't think it's awful, is not by any means a difference-making unit.
Yeah. Now, there is some youth there. We do have a decent amount of people in the room right now. Well, of course, we just lost Trech Kekahuna, but that's for another show. But yeah, I mean, I think that we still have talent there. So we would have liked to see more, but it's okay because the top end talent is certainly nice to see. Put your grades for any of these rooms in the chat. If you're listening to this live, you can do it now. Later, please put it in there. We'd love to hear what everyone thinks about the grades of the class. Moving on, running back, there is nothing. So let's just skip that one because we got 3 last year.
Not applicable.
Tight end. This is one that I think I'm very interested to hear your takes on this. Nizyi Davis, 3-star tight end out of Indianapolis, 6'4", 215. And Emmett Bork, the late addition of the class, 3-star, 6'6", 240 out of Economawalk. What's your grade on this? I think this is a really interesting discussion.
I actually have it as a B. I think that I really like the upside of Davis. I think that if he hits, and I think he's a guy who's really going to work, I think that the upside there is you have a guy who's an NFL tight end. I think he can be a guy who can run in the 4.6 range with good size and physicality. I really like the way he goes up and attacks the ball in the air. He really has strong hands, and it seems to shrug off defenders when they're kind of draping on him when he goes up for the ball, which is an underrated ability. But he's a guy that I think has some upside that we don't really have on the roster right now. A little bit like Magone, except he's more polished as a blocker and a guy who he has more size to be physical as a blocker, which I think is a nice plus because it gives him some versatility if you do want to use him in line. Ryan and I compared him a little bit to Lance Kendricks in terms of like his mentality on the field. I don't think he's quite as versatile as a receiver as what Kendricks was, but you're talking the type of athlete that can go out there and make plays in the passing game, running up the seam, which is something we don't really have right now.
We don't have it at all. For the last 2 years, we haven't really seen a lot of production out of the tight end room, and you're exactly right. I believe in Nizyi Davis. You're right. I think the Lance Kendrick thing is interesting. Agreed. Not quite as athletic and versatile, especially in the receiving, but he's a guy that can be a reliable playmaker. And that's what we need. We need a guy that can go out there and actually make some things happen, be a safety valve for whatever the quarterback is, be a guy on third down in the red zone. Like, these are areas where you need a guy like Nizyi Davis. I was worried there was some late talk about him not waiting until signing until later. So it's really good. Great reporting by our friend Nick Osen, by the way. He's always on top of this stuff. 247 Sports.
Nick had a really good relationship with Davis.
Yeah, listen. And by the way, if you haven't read, if you're not a member of the VIP of 247, it's worth it. But even if you are, just go out there and read Nick's stuff. He's built relationships with a lot of these guys, does amazing work. So please go check. He's of course our good friend as well. So go check it out. Yeah. So for me, Justin, this is an A- room for me. I'm very happy with this room. A- just because I think
let's talk about Bork a little bit. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Bork? I like Bork, but yeah, give me your take.
Sure. I view him as I think he can be a better version of Ashcraft. I think that's what you're looking at there. I think he's a guy who projects a little bit more as an inline guy. He's not playing that in high school, but I don't think he's got necessarily the burst to really get upfield and be a guy that can be split out. But good frame, good size. I think he is a good receiver. He's not a great receiver in terms of I think he's going to be a guy that you want to go out there and grab 10 yards. I think he's capable of doing that. He's not a guy that's going to stretch the seam. But he can definitely block off a safety or a corner if they put him on him. And I think that he's a guy who has a big enough catch radius that he can be a problem for a linebacker.
Yeah, for me, I think of these guys as kind of a 1-2 punch because you got Bork is 240 and he'll have a good side, good frame, maybe 6'6". I really see him as the kind of guy that's more the run blocking safety situation when, we need some more pass pro in there. We're doing a max protect, but you still need someone as a potential check down. That's where I see Bork's role. But I think that's a good
block and then kind of
right. It's super complementary to Davis and to the room, because at this point you look at the tight end room and you don't see much at all. To be honest, there's just Ashcraft and Noah Kowski. They're really not the guys, or at least
high take a step next year and or McGowan.
Right. So, but these guys, I just feel have that 1-2 punch ability long term. And the thing I like most about Bork is the 6'6", like you said, at the frame, and that he's already 240. He's guy, he can put on more good weight. That's really what you want at that position in tandem with a guy who can be the pass catching guy like Davis. So yeah, really nice late pickup there for Fickell. Again, just recruiting wins all across the board. Okay. Overall offense, Justin, give me your overall offense grade.
Oh man. I would say for me, it's probably I'll give it a B plus, somewhere in between there. I think I really like the line class. I like what they got at quarterback. Obviously would have liked more at wide receiver. I think I'm going to go B because I think they still needed a running back in this class. And I think that's a miss not getting one. And I think that you would like to see one more big body on the outside wide receiver. I'm a big proponent of have some versatility in that room. I would like us to find a guy, even if he's not a burner, a 6'4" guy at wide receiver, that if things click with him, you have a big body guy who's going to be really tough to handle for a corner. So what if he runs a 4.6 plus? I don't really care if he's got the ability to kind of get a long gait and has that ability to kind of get his body between a corner and the ball. He's going to be an asset to the offense. And we haven't had that since what? Darren Charles?
Wow, there's a name I haven't talked about in a while.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, so for me, it's a B plus, and I think that honestly, I wanted to give it higher, but without more wide receivers, you really can't. But when you have an A quarterback, I mean, you got Carter Smith, and you got five really strong offensive line recruits. To me, it's a B plus total offensive class. All right. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Again, we talk about the trenches. We talk about growth in the trenches. We really needed this. We'll start with the defensive line. Torin Pettaway, 3-star, 6'5", 265 out of Middleton. Drayden Pavey, I know Justin likes him, 6'3", 305 out of Cincinnati. Xavier Akpanu, 3-star, 6'2", 300 out of Denton, Texas. And Jaylen Williams, maybe kind of part of the linebacker room, but he's more of an edge guy anyway.
He's going to be used as a stand-up defensive end. It's fine putting him in the defensive line group.
6'6". By the way, 6'6", 265 out of Palatine, Illinois. Darling of the class, of course, Jaylen Williams. What's your grade on the defensive line?
It's an A. I feel like you got some quality, a really good quality in this group. I feel like you have three guys that I think are borderline. I never want to call anybody a sure thing, but I think you have three guys that you feel really good about, and you have a guy that's kind of a ball of clay in Pettaway that you might be able to get some turn into a really nice player. I think Okponu and Pavey may be able to steal some snaps as freshmen. I think Williams may very well get some reps. I don't think he's going to get – none of them are likely to get heavy playing time. I want to be very clear on that because we saw how this year played out. I think players expect that. But if we're going to have a good season, these guys can't be playing heavy reps. I do think you need to get their feet wet for moving forward. A guy like Williams by the end of the season might be able to do some things. But I would be shocked, especially because I don't think anybody Pettaway is coming in early, that any of these guys are physically going to be ready to give any significant snaps as freshmen.
Can I just tell you the Pettaway thing, Minnesota thing still bothers me. I don't like that whole flip.
Yeah, for a guy who's from Wisconsin to not have the hatred, like it's been instilled in me since I was like a teenager and started following Badger football.
I'm all for Pettaway. I'm glad he's here. I think he's a great addition to the room, but I'm just like, oh man, I need the whole Minnesota nonsense.
I can respect Iowa, but like if it's the same thing with Nebraska. Like I don't want to be taking anything from Nebraska. Get out of here. Like if we go and take a recruit from that state that we take away from them, absolutely. Because I like going in their backyard and taking a player they want. But I don't want to be fighting over a kid that, for better or worse, even despite losing to Nebraska finally for the first time in a decade, I view us as a better program. It's something we need to prove because this year was a train wreck. But Wisconsin needs to get back to beating them on the field and proving that we have better talent. So, those are the two teams. I can deal with losing to Iowa. I can't with Nebraska and Minnesota.
I can't deal with losing to Minnesota, period. I can't deal with that at all. It's awful. Since we lost Keanu Benton, we haven't had anybody who can really be that guy up front. We thought we were going to see that from Jamel Howard. We haven't quite seen that yet. Drayden Pavey and Xavier Okponu. These guys to me are just beefy guys up front. They can eat up offensive linemen and can move too, by the way. They're quite athletic, and I feel like they got really good vision, really good hands. I really like Pavey. I just think Pavey's a guy that can be very disruptive on the inside. And when you guys got guys that are already 300 pounds, they both got good frames. I think that is a real good recipe for two solid down linemen that, as we always talk about, can let the linebackers, can let the edge rushers do what they need to do. Too often in the last 2 to 3 seasons, we've seen our defensive linemen get swallowed up over and over and over again. Now, we hope that we've got some good young talent. I think this is a really good class. I'm also giving this an A. But I'll tell you, Jaylen Williams made it an A for sure because that was a huge get. Anytime you rip a guy away from Michigan, that's massive. He's the reason it's an A. But one of the other reasons it's an A is because of Pavey and Okponu and the beef that they add in the middle of the line. So Badger fans, think about a couple years from now, we're going to see these guys as two down linemen.
It's going to be interesting because I kind of look at it like you took Keanu Benton and split his skill set into two different players. You got Okponu, who's a guy who's capable. Like when I look at him and his ability to disengage offensive linemen and just make plays, like he's incredible. He never goes backwards. He gets hit. Then he just sits there and he reads where the running back is going to do, and then he just chucks the offensive lineman every time. It's incredible on film watching him do it. But he's not a guy who's going to be really disruptive and get into the backfield much. Then there's Pavey, a guy who's got that burst. He's a lot like Elijah Hills was in this class or this last season. The difference is he's probably going to be able to play it at 310, 315 and be able to move that way. Hills was 290. So there's a significant difference in size and weight, and that's just a massive difference in terms of an offensive lineman having to deal with that. Like it's just harder to stop that momentum when you have a guy who's just bigger and stronger and has that same level of quickness.
We said it at the top of the show, and I'll say it again. Trenches is how we're going to build this team and raise the floor. This is doing it. The O-line class, the D-line class, I'm extremely happy with this. We got 4 defensive linemen, and that's exactly what we need to do. Keep getting, and that this can't be the end. Next year, I want to see it again. We need to continue stacking these classes.
But those two guys by next year already could both be sitting in the 315 range, I think, and be ready to kind of anchor down the middle of the line.
They can definitely be pretty. They can get snaps. 100% they can get snaps, which will be great. All right, let's go to linebackers. We'll do kind of both inside and outside here. We've got Nicolas Clayton, 4 stars, 6'4", 215 out of Gainesville, Florida. Mason Posa, my number 1 guy in this class, 4 stars, 6'3", 210 out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Samuel Lateju, he's going to be the outside guy along with Clayton. 3 stars, 6'5", 230 out of Lawrenceville, New Jersey. And Cooper Catalano, another inside guy, 3 star, 6'2", 200 out of Germantown, Wisconsin. This is a good room. This is a good. I'll go first on this. To me, this is an A because Mason Posa is the guy. I absolutely think he's fantastic. And Nicolas, Clayton, and Mason Posa. To me, that's why this is an A room, because you've got an edge rusher who's got such a motor out there with Nicolas Clayton, really disruptive, really good with his hands, and can make plays.
Really natural pass rusher too. Like he's got great instincts from a pass rush standpoint.
Completely agree. And Mason Posa, we've talked about a lot. We've had him on the show. So good. Sideline to sideline speed. He's a guy that you look at Christian Allegro and you think even a better version of that. Like he's a guy that's got that really potential to be an NFL guy, and a long history of linebackers that we've had here. Super disruptive, very quick, extremely athletic, really good use of his vision. His vision's really good, right? He knows how to find those holes and fill them. Very, very strong. Mason Posa is the darling for me of this entire class. So that's why this room is an A.
Yeah. Clayton, to me, looking at the defensive guys, is the guy who I think out of this class will be, at the end of the day, the one that's going to get the name recognition and will be the star. I think because he's going to be the guy that's going to make the flash plays in terms of the sack numbers and tackles for loss. Posa is going to be your kind of dude, all-around guy out there, but I just don't know if he's going to get as much pass rush, but I think he'll be a star too. And then I look at a guy like Catalano, who I think, to me, he reminds me a lot of Sanborn. Like he's a guy who moves well on that backside. He's not as explosive as the other two, but all he does is make plays. Like he's constantly in the right spot. He's racking up tackles like crazy. And he's a guy that probably doesn't get quite the credit for his athleticism of what he actually is.
Yeah, he's kind of an underrated guy in this class, right? I mean, and we're not going to do actually underrated today, but if there was an underrated guy in this class, it's Cooper Catalano, because no one's really, when you look at the linebacker room, you're talking about Posa, you're talking about Clayton. And Lateju, we've talked about a ton. Lateju's got a huge upside. Mm-hmm. We haven't even brought his name up yet. Cooper, it's a really great room when you look at it. When you look at it combined, there's stars in there, there's underrated guys, and all four of them could be really, really big contributors on this team.
Yeah, Lateju and Williams, I think, are honestly playing the same position. Like they're going to be using the same way. I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them are under 270 by the time all is said and done. Lateju may take some time to get there. I think Williams will get there fairly quickly because I think he seems to put weight on a little bit easier. Like he was a defensive lineman last year at like 265.
You think Lateju gets to 270?
I think he's capable of carrying that. Yes.
Wow. I think 250.
His coach even thought that he might end up getting to the defensive lineman territory. It's really it's going to depend on how he matures. I think he was 230 last year. I would guess that he's probably 240 this year. I don't know.
I kind of see him as a 250 guy. Just I like the little more of that speed and kind of like that. I don't really see him as a guy like Jaylen Williams as far as overall size. But hey, I mean,
no, Williams will carry more. You could get Williams to 290 if you wanted to, and he could carry that and carry it well. Like he could play a 5-tech end at NFL. Like when I originally did him, and this is not to say NFL JJ Watt, but I compared him to JJ Watt in college. I'm like, that's his ceiling. Like he could be that type of game wrecker on the edge for Wisconsin if that's the position they decide to play him at, where he's out on the edge and able to pass rush. He's that type of guy with his quickness and lateral quickness, especially ability to get past people with his length. But that's how I look at it. Like Lateju is going to be a little bit smaller. He's 6'4", 6'5".
He's 6'5". Yeah.
He's broader shoulders than a guy like Clayton, who I think will probably max out at like a 240. But he's going to be like a legit 6'4", 240. Like both these guys are going to carry really good frames by the time they leave college, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's going to get a lot bigger on the defensive side of the ball in a couple of years.
It's so fun to talk about recruiting because this is where we can actually get excited about guys. Now, some of these guys aren't going to hit. I'm going to put up a comment here from Pavel Strelchuk that says, doesn't matter when half the class transfers from every team. Look, we're going to lose a lot of these guys. We're going to lose. We look at the 23 class. It was just decimated in the last few days. The 24 class will lose.
What I will say about the 23 class, it's a crossover class. Like it's half recruited by the previous staff. It's half recruited guys that were primarily recruited to go to Cincinnati. So like you're already getting them to kind of follow you as it is. Like there's more drama associated with that class than the 24 and 25 classes are, which is the staff has been recruiting you to Wisconsin the whole time.
All right, cornerbacks. Jaimier Scott, 4-star, 6'1", 177 out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Jahmare Washington, 6'2", 170 out of Chicago, Illinois, 3-star. And another 3-star, the newest addition, Cairo Skanes, 6'1", 185 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So 3 cornerbacks in this class. Justin, how do you feel about these guys? A couple really good athletes here. What's your grade?
Yeah, I think Scott projects kind of as the Austin Brown type role, a guy who's going to be kind of in that nickel corner. Maybe drop back to play some safety. I really like him. He had an absolutely huge senior year. I think he had like 7-8 picks. He had a ton of receiving yards on the offensive side. He's not a guy that probably projects athletically on the outside. Like, I don't know if he can be a 4-4 guy. He's not a Xavier Lucas type athlete. He could probably play it, but if you want him to, like, if you're going to maximize his value, it's probably in that nickel role. I think he's better off coming forward than going back. I love Washington. I think he's a guy that may not necessarily have super top end speed, but he is a top level athlete. Like, he's a guy who has great lateral quickness. He's strong, he's physical, and he can really jump. When you have a guy that's that explosive, good things are going to happen at corner. I really like him. And Skanes kind of reminds me of Fortgreen. I think he's a guy who is capable of having a really high floor. I think he's got some really good instincts in terms of what he sees on the field. He's more of a zone corner to me watching him. Like, he's a guy, I don't know how often you want to put him man up on an island, but I think that he's capable of dropping back and ball hawking. If you keep him eyes up on a quarterback, he's going to make plays.
What's your grade on this room?
I would probably give this a B-. I don't think there's a guy that I look at that I'm like, this guy is a can't miss star, but there's some really nice upside in Washington, a guy who has a really nice floor in Skanes. And I think that you have a player who I expect to play multiple years as a starter in Scott.
Yeah, which is why I'm a little higher on it. I'm at the B+ in this room, just because I'm really happy with all the defensive positions, honestly. But I agree with you on Skanes being the high floor guy, and I think Remington Moss is going to be a bit more of that, like, kind of Austin Brown.
I don't know what he's going to be.
I think he's going to be kind of like that nickelback guy, which is why, but anyway, Jaimier Scott's got that, like, super sort of the high upside. Yeah. Maybe not as high of a floor as Skanes, but he's a guy that's going to be a starter. You look at him, you look at Xavier Lucas, and even guys like Jahmare Washington. I think you're building, again, the athleticism in this room. Just Xavier Lucas alone last year, you saw how much more athletic he was than anyone else we had on the field. And then now you couple that with guys like Scott and Washington, who add more athleticism, not as much from Skanes, not quite the athlete that Scott and Washington are, but yeah, really good overall, just top end athleticism in the room, which to me, yeah. So this is a B+ for me. I like it. Safety. So we got Remington Moss, 3-star, 6'1", 185 out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Grant Dean, 3-star, 6', 180 out of Neenah, Wisconsin, and Luke Emmerich, 6'1", 195 out of Monticello, Minnesota. What's your grade on safety? To me, this is kind of average.
I actually give this a B+. I really like the film on Emmerich and Dean. I think they're guys that run really well for safety. But when I look at their film, they're really instinctual. They're guys that run well. They like to hit. And I think both of them project well on the back end of being able to kind of be interchangeable. So you have some nice versatility there in terms of what you can do from your defensive scheme, because you don't have a guy that has to be playing in the box and one that has to be playing center field. And that gives you some options. And then I think Moss is kind of the X factor there. He can be a little bit of everything, but he's physical. No matter what you do with him, that guy will hit anything that moves. And he's a little more raw in terms of, like, as an athlete, but he's a really high upside guy. Like, if he can get his technique right with his physicality, guys are just going to hate dealing with him.
You talked about Dean and Emmerich and the ability to hit. What are your thoughts on these guys in the run game and the ability to be instinctual? And because they're going to have to be, really good run defenders as well. How do you feel about that? That's where I'm a little bit concerned about the safety room.
I think they need to put on weight. I don't think they're guys that you want necessarily starting as freshmen, but I think both of them are capable of, sitting in that 205, 210 range if they get into the strength and conditioning program for multiple years. They're definitely not there now. But given a little time, I think they'll be more than adequate in terms of bulk. think that from a explosiveness standpoint, both of them are capable of really coming downhill and blowing guys up.
I think Emmerich is the guy that I like most in this room. I think he's a really good athlete. I think, to me, when I watched the film on these three, I was like, okay, good. Nothing jumped off the page at me, and that's why I give this a B-. I'm not upset about this room at all. To me, I'm like, okay, we got three guys. I like the number. We got the Remington Moss guy who can definitely be that corner / nickel guy. So I'm good with the room. Nothing jumped off the page like in the other rooms, I guess. And I'm not saying I'm not knocking the safeties. I just feel like it was fine. Totally acceptable for me.
One of the things that I see with these two guys, just based off their instincts and the way they seem to carry themselves in the field, they feel like I was talking about Wisconsin needing a couple guys that kind of are leaders. Dean and Emmerich feel like guys that are going to be future leaders of this defense and be guys that are going to kind of keep everyone in check and keep things going in the right direction. And I really like that part.
Yeah. Okay. So grading the entire defense, for me, this is going to be an A-. Again, I feel like I'm really happy with D-line and linebackers. And the secondary picks are good. They're kind of basically a B for me in general. So A- for me. I got A's up front. I got a B's in the back. A- for the defense.
Yeah, I look at it similarly. I just think they did so well on the front seven that I have to give it an A, because Wisconsin badly needed to get line depth, and they badly needed to restock the linebacker room with guys that are plus athletes. And I feel like they did that. Like, there was an absolute opportunity where we could have just ended up getting some just a guy type players. And you look at it and I see guys like Clayton and Posa and Lateju, and then you have Williams and Pavey, and then a guy like Akponu, who I look at as just a lane clogger in the middle on defense. And I really like what they did in terms of the talent that they stockpiled in this class.
Yeah, stockpiling talent, and ultimately the theme for me in this is trenches. Again, I've said it. I love that the trenches got a lot better here. Overall grade on the entire class before we get into some superlatives.
To me, I give it an A. And the reason I give it an A is because I feel like after last year's class, there was a chance that we could have taken a step back. I feel like this is a great follow-up class to that group in terms of providing additional depth and getting some upside spots that we maybe didn't do quite as well last year. Like, you got a guy in Smith who I think we loved Mabry last year. Smith might be even more, have a higher ceiling. You got guys in that linebacker room that I think Clayton can play right off the bat, at least as a pass rusher. And I think some of the other guys might be able to even sneak out on the field. So this is a really solid class to me, and I think that there's a lot of guys who you look at that have some star potential to them.
Yeah, A- for me, and the only reason I'm giving it an A- overall is because we got one wide receiver. I don't love that. It's something that's upsetting to me because I feel like we could have been better there. But everything else, I'm good with. A- overall. All right, let's do some superlatives on this class here. We'll start with most likely to play on Sundays.
You want to do one for offense and one for defense?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. On offense, it is probably going to be Hardy Watts. On defense, it is probably going to be, I'm going to say Jaylen Williams. I just think if his frame fills out, you're looking at a guy who's probably 280, 290 and ready to play 3-4 defensive end, or a guy who could probably even play in a 4-3 with his level of athleticism.
So on defense, I'm going Nicolas Clayton because we talked about him. That there's a guy that I just feel like has, NFL.
I think it does too. Absolutely.
All over him, which is great to see. Boy, on offense, I find this to be a little difficult. I agree with you on Watts. I'm gonna actually go with Nolan Davenport just because I feel like I like all the line, but I feel like when you got a guy that he's got a really good frame, and I really like how athletic he is and just how he moves. I just feel like Nolan Davenport to me is the guy that I'm like, he just projects. Now he's gonna need a lot of development. He's gonna need a lot of growth, but he just seems like that guy that I feel like is sort of kind of under the radar in this O-line class that I think could be the guy that's like, yeah, he's a surefire draft pick. So I also thought about Eugene Hilton in this category because I really like him. Okay. recruiter of the year. What recruiter are you? I feel like we all know where this is going, but
I'm not even going to do one of the assistant coaches. I'm just going to say Max and Pat. Okay. And I don't know. They may win this award in perpetuity because they just crush it every cycle. They get us in on a ton of guys, and they allow the coach. They kind of tee it up for the rest of the coaching staff. Blazek would be the guy if I was choosing a position coach because he killed this class. But I mean, those two guys do such an exceptional job of running the recruiting department and getting us in on guys. This is the best back-to-back line classes I've ever seen in my time following Wisconsin. And they may not look that way in terms of recruiting pedigree, but I can tell you when you look at the film and how athletic the guys are in comparison to some of the other guys that we've had, these guys their fluidity as athletes, and most of them are all carrying close to what their college playing weight is going to be, is really impressive. These guys move really well at borderline playable weights. Most of them are in the 280 range. I don't expect them to need too much more.
Totally. I agree with Matt, 290 in some cases. I think it's clearly Blazek. I think he's done a fantastic job. He's to me, he's the MVP of this entire staff the last couple of years. Like he is just not the couple of years, but he's the dude. Like the offensive line was a strength of our team. He continues to bring in good guys, and it's very, very clear who that top guy is. Okay, next up, Justin, the sky's the limit. This is the highest upside. I'll go first on this one. I'm going to go a little bit different. You're going to be surprised by this. I'm going to Nizyi Davis for highest upside. I really like this guy, and I think we obviously talked about him a lot, the pass catching ability. He can stretch the field, use the seams. But I just feel like he's a guy that if he continues to develop and get stronger and become a really good route running tight end and blocking, I think he's a guy that definitely I can see playing on Sundays. He's got a really high upside. And when you have a game changing type tight end, i.e., look at what we've had in the past with Ferguson and guys like Kendricks and everybody, and you look at guys like teams like Penn State this year, and that a really good, strong pass catching tight end can make your team massively improved. So I'm going to go highest upside, Nizyi Davis.
Okay. I'm going to say that it's Clayton for me.
Okay.
I think that by the time he leaves Wisconsin, he could be a Zach Bond or a Nick Herbig type edge guy, which I think we would agree transforms this defense. And there's still obviously some scheme things that need to be worked out, but from a guy who can consistently win on the edge, Clayton is a guy who I think can do that at a very high level. And one of the perks to him is he's actually got a better frame than some of those guys. Herbig and Bond were a little undersized. Clayton actually carries a legit 6'4" and is a guy who has the length to be even more of a problem.
All right, so let's go first on the field, Justin. Who is going to be the first one of these guys to really get meaningful minutes, meaningful snaps on this team?
I think Clayton has a chance to play right away. Number one, that room is not particularly deep. Number two, I think his skill set plays. You're probably not going to want him out there in high leverage rundowns, but I think as a pass rusher, you can absolutely put him out there and just say, go get the quarterback.
It's good. I think that's a good one. I struggled with this one. I went back and forth with Clayton. Certainly I thought about Posa. I would be shocked to see Posa starting. And I also, the other one I thought about was Carter Smith. Just because, it's not out of the question that Carter Smith is the starter next year. I'm not
asking a lot of him though to come in.
It would be pretty special. That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna go Posa on this one just because I think Posa's he's gonna be another answer for me. I didn't want to double up, but to me, like when I think of the guy that's gonna make the first impact right away, it's Posa. There's a lot of guys out there, even on the D line, like guys we've talked about before with Okanu, that could really make some impact right away. There's some O linemen that could make impact, generally not in their freshman year. Nizyi Davis potentially, but I'm going to go with Posa on this one. All right, highest floor. Who's the guy that's got the highest floor? You're just a sure bet that he's going to be a solid contributor for this program.
Oh man, I honestly think it's going to be. Let's see. That might be Posa for me. I have a really hard time looking at him and not seeing him be a really productive player here. I just think that he's got athletically, he's got everything you'd like. He's got instincts. He's got a motor that doesn't quit. He's a guy that I feel very much is pretty can't miss.
So for me, it's Hardy Watts. I think there's a guy that I don't feel like he really missed on. He's, when you got 6'6", 290, he's going to play at 310, 315. He's going to be a dude up front. Our offensive linemen are, I think this class of O linemen and last year's class all have a high floor. Not all, every single individual, but in general, they're really high floor O line classes, which is why when I think about high floor, I immediately went to the line and I thought, okay, who am I most confident in can be that guy that's definitely going to hit. And for me, it's Hardy Watts. All right. King of the trenches. So O-line or D-line, who's going to be the guy 3 years from now that we look back and think, yeah, this 2025 class, this guy on either line, who's the king of the trenches?
It's going to be Jaylen Williams to me, because if he hits, he is, as much as I like the offensive lineman, the defensive linemen are going to be the ones that get the recognition. And that's going to be a guy, we just don't get guys like this. Like, I can't remember the last time we got a edge guy that we looked at on the defensive side that we thought was capable of being a game wrecker. I can't even remember a guy that had his kind of frame on the edge. Like a 6'6" guy that could potentially carry 290 athletically. It is JJ. But other than that, I mean, JJ was kind of a unicorn here. Before him, you had to go back to like a guy like Erasmus James.
Yeah, God,
we just don't get that type here often.
I really miss Erasmus James. Boy, that's a nice guy to see.
We all miss Erasmus James. How horrible would it be to have a guy who could be a first-round defensive line pick for Wisconsin? Right.
I'm agreeing with our good friend Zach Bartz here. Xavier Ogpunu. To me, he's the king of the trenches, man. I think he's. I don't talk about many positions as much as I do talk about the Keanu Benton style up front, solid, nose tackle type guy.
I'll be shocked if he is not a really good run stopper.
Yeah, it's so important for this team. We get caught up in the edge rushers, the pass rushers, all this. We get caught up in all that, linebackers, even the secondary. And one of the most underappreciated roles on any team is the interior of the defensive line, and it's just so critical. And yeah, for me, king of the trenches, Xavier Ogpunu. Okay, Justin, transfer portal target. Okay, so this is a guy that we missed on that. So it's like the first time the portal opens up and we're going to, hopefully he's in there. Someone that basically, what's our biggest miss, right? That we're going to hopefully get after another time.
Oh man.
I'll go first on this one. Because wide receivers have been such an issue, I'm going Moise Tunkara as the biggest miss.
That's the first name that popped in my head.
I really liked him, and I was really pissed off when we lost Moise Tunkara.
The staff really liked him too, as a guy that they thought had a lot of upside potential.
And Nick Osen liked him a lot. He kind of sold me on him. I didn't really, and I really liked the guy, and I feel like if we would have had Moise coupled with Hilton, I'd have been really excited about it. And still not super deep, but I'd been really happy with the wide receiver room. And like, okay, that's a good room. It's under right now. The one guy's not enough. Moise Tunkara is the guy that I think was the biggest miss that we had.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. I'm trying to think otherwise.
I know that Nick Osen said, I think Brendan Ains, and I think I forgot what Ryan said.
Actually, Ains would probably be a really good one. The only other one I would say would maybe be the running back.
Isaiah, what's his name?
No. The one down at just switched to Florida. I can't.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. I can't. Someone put it in the chat.
Byron Lewis.
Byron Lewis. Yeah.
It would have been nice to get him in this class as a running back. I think he's a guy that would have fit right in with the other group, and they would have really had a well-stocked running back room with him in there.
I mean, to be honest, and we can gotta just hit on this real quick. I'm not bothered that we didn't get a running back. I'm really not, because we got 3 last year, and I think that you get another one, and we're already thinking about what if
Zach Bart just named my guy.
Well, this is who Ryan said was Zay Gentry as well.
No, not Zay Gentry. No, he named him down here. Jace Clarizzo. This is the guy that just got to Alabama, flipped to Alabama, and then flipped back to Michigan State. When I was watching the film on the running backs earlier in this in the cycle, before anyone was really jumping on teams and committing, he was the guy that I looked at, and he reminded me of a slightly bigger James White. And I'm like, I want that guy in my running back room. He's a guy that is going to play at a really high level. Bart's, knock it off. You keep coming up with people that I keep forgetting about. Marshall Pritchett would have been offensively the guy on the offensive side that I would have said he would have been fighting Jaylen Williams for the best player in this class. He's a difference maker at tight end. He's at Alabama now. There's a reason why Alabama has him. The guys
they are Alabama. Thanks for the comments, though. That Zach Bart's always a good friend of the show, and so many people in here comments. Bill Woj is in here, Mike H, a lot of good people in here. All right, 2025 class, biggest star. Who's the biggest star, MVP, whatever you want to call it? Who's the top of this class?
It's Jaylen Williams to me. We just don't get guys like that. I think that he's got a super high ceiling. Like, we're talking, if everything clicks for him, you're talking a first-round defensive lineman. God, how nice would that be? It's been so long since Wisconsin's had one.
God, yeah, I don't even want to think about that because it's just making me mad about what we saw this year. For me, it's Mason Posa. You already knew my answer to this. It's very clear. Wisconsin has a long history of good middle linebackers, and he is that next guy in that line. He was on our show a few months ago, and he's an all-around, seems like just a good dude. Really going to work hard. To me, he's going to be the darling of this class.
He's got some Leo Chanel in him in terms of the guy who's just going to be a meathead out there and kind of keep everyone locked in.
Mike H agrees, Posa or Williams. Yeah, I think most people generally have Posa, Williams, or Smith in their MVP top of the class. Obviously, Carter Smith, an honorable mention here because he's the quarterback. If he is as good, I mean, other than Graham Mertz, he's basically the best quarterback we've ever recruited. So if he can hit, then he will end up being the biggest guy in this class because we need that. That's going to do it for the show today. I wanted to kind of hit the little signing day stuff. We'll be back again, of course, on Sunday to talk about some basketball, some more football, and all kinds of good stuff. Justin, final thoughts before we close the show.
Yeah, well, hopefully we have an offensive coordinator that we're happy to see at that point in time and somebody that we're happy with. This is such a big deal for Fickell. He has got to hit on this hire. I don't want to see some retreaded guy or somebody that we're looking at like, why is this guy? And the other thing I want to say is I don't want to see him choose an offensive coordinator because of the quarterback that he can bring with him. That's a short-sighted move. I don't like it. It would be great if they have somebody like that. If you're going to get Craddock from Tulane and have him bring his quarterback because he's a young guy, amazing. Otherwise, I don't want to see you reach on somebody and take someone that you shouldn't be. Yeah,
I agree. I'm a little bit perturbed that I thought once the posting expired, we were going to just have an announcement the next day. But I'm upset about this. And I think that whether it's Craddock, whether it's Faulkner, whatever it is, we need to figure out something out, and it's got to be the right move. So if it takes extra time, as long as we get the guy, I'm okay with it. One more question. A couple people have asked about this. I wanted to hit this. Mike H asked earlier, what about the Weigman talk? And Ryan Willie just asked as well. What are your thoughts?
I would much rather get a guy from a lower level that has been productive and experienced success over a guy who has been effectively a bust at the Power 4 level, because he hasn't played enough to develop well, and he hasn't produced when he's actually played. So it's really hard for me to look at him and be excited about this guy. I don't want another retread from one of the Power 4 schools that was a guy that couldn't cut it. I don't see what we're doing.
I am a little bit torn on this. I hear you very much on your, lower level guy, and I think there's something to that. But I also hear Ryan's kind of point was the experience side of it and playing in those big games, big atmospheres. I tend to agree with you, honestly, a bit more. I tend to kind of agree with you on that. You want a guy that's hungry. You want a guy that's ready to play. You want a guy that's produced well at the lower levels.
And I don't want a guy who's coming out that the only thing they're looking for is money. And a lot of these guys, that's the way it is. And if you get a guy from a lower level, they're looking for exposure. They'll take money, but a lot of the times they're like, I'm jumping up a level because I need to prove myself because I want a shot at the NFL.
Yeah. Whatever it is, we need an offensive coordinator. We need a quarterback, but we got ourselves one hell of a 2025 class. With that, we will talk to you all again on Sunday. Thanks for joining us, and on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin!